The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hi there. I'm very excited about my guest, but before I get to my guest, I have a little message from our sponsor to them. When you give your child a phone, you're not giving them access to the internet, you're giving the internet access to them. But there's a way that you can mitigate for the dangers that that implies, and that is with the Canopy app. I've talked to the people at this company, and they have your child's best interests at heart. They screen images that come through on the phone and they blur out the sections that you don't want your kid to see. They actually can in real time prevent sexting and other things that happen with phones. And so I would encourage you to take a look at Canopy and use the code SAM at checkout for a special discount. Go over to canopy.com, take a look at Canopy, use my code SAM at discount, and then get back to me and tell me how much you love it. Thanks so much. Bye. So I'm excited to get started talking about homeschooling. I have some big announcements. So welcome to people who are just joining me now. And thank you for the hearts and the waves. I'll wave back. That was a virtual wave, but I'm waving a real wave. Yeah, I've really been looking forward to coming back today and sort of getting, I'm revamping things. I'm changing things around a little bit. I want to be more purposeful because what I've realized is I get a lot of the same questions from people wherever I go, wherever I speak, whenever I do one of these, actually, I get and on email. And by the way, you can email me, of course. You just go to samsorbo.com and you can find everything. You go to sorbostudios.com. That's the big hub. And then I'm there and stuff. So you can always feel free to reach out. I wanted to start today with, let's go over some of the lies that homeschoolers believe, or that people who doubt that they can homeschool believe. Let's not call them homeschoolers because they're not quite in it. And by the way, of course, if you have a question, just put it in the comments and I'll try to keep up on the scroll of comments. I'm also going to post this on Rumble and YouTube. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed, please go subscribe. So lies that homeschoolers believe. The biggest one is, I'm not good enough to homeschool my children. I don't know enough. I don't know how to teach, right? That's all basically the same lie. And the lie is that you can't, you can't, you're going to fail. That's the biggest lie, is you're going to fail. And the best, I have a couple of different ways to combat that lie, but really the best way to combat that lie is to point out the school fails every day, all day long. They fail and then they fail and they have no compunction about it. They don't care. So they fail. And then they get up and they move on. They go back for another day. So the first, and in fact, this is what brought me finally to homeschool. I said to my husband, I think I could fail at homeschooling and our child would still be better off. And that's the truth. That even if you fail, you will have succeeded. Because no matter what you do, if you keep your child outside the institution, he will be better off. She will be better off. And that might be, oh, I would love to, Scripture for the Souls. Just go to the website and email me there, or message me here and I will get back in touch with you. Your child will be better off because there are so many bad things that happen in the schools over which you have no control. I'm not even talking about the stuff that you kind of sort of have control over, which is very little. I love this comment, not many downsides to homeschooling. I think the important thing is that getting your kids out of the indoctrination at the failure factory, right? It's the factory of failure. I love that. Very nice. So how do you convince yourself that even if you're failing, you're doing the right thing? You have to understand that they are seeking to fail. and I'm not saying teachers, typically teachers are great. Like they're lovely people and they really try. In his steps, la.org backs up everything Miss Sam is saying. Thank you. We are converting public school brainwashed children into truth schools at In His Steps. Well, very good. This is a difficult thing to do because we've all been brainwashed. That's why you feel inadequate. There's no reason for you to feel inadequate to teach a second grader or a third grader. There's no reason except you've been taught you're inadequate. Where did you learn that? At school. So why do you think you can't? Because they taught you that you can't, because they don't want you trying this at home. One of my proudest moments in home education, my 15-year-old can't name the Kardashians, but knows who Alexander Solzhenitsyn is. That brings tears to my eyes. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. If all you do is keep your child out of the culture and into the truth, you have succeeded. Another lie, my children need teachers besides me. No, they don't. No, they don't. They need you. And I'll tell you a quick short story. We were having lunch with another young woman who is a friend of my daughter's. And she said, she's gone to public school. She's a lovely young girl. She went to public school and she said, I begged my parents to homeschool me, but they refused. They said they couldn't, they didn't have time or whatever. And you can see the hurt in her. So this is what I say to parents who tell me, well, my kid wants me to homeschool. I say, well, then you must buck up, grow a pair. You must. If your child is asking you to, then you must, because if you don't, you're failing them twice. I don't know how else to put it. How can kids learn anything? Dodging gangs, bullies, pedos. Well, okay, so that's true. So we can talk about the failures in our schools, right? One of the biggest failures that nobody talks about is the level of anxiety that a school day brings to a child, and the fact that anxiety is linked with unlearning. It's linked. It's tied. The higher the anxiety, the lower the learning curve. So when you're anxious, you can't take tests. You can't. You can't learn, you can't focus, you can't concentrate. And yeah, just think about the long hours on the school bus. But I want to move on from this. I wanted to start with the lies that homeschoolers believe, because I want to kind of set the stage. The biggest lie is kids belong in school. It's like, where's your evidence for that? Where do you base that on? It's the way we've always done it. That is no reason to still do it. You know, we used to, I'm trying to think. Oh, we used to lock pregnant women inside with the curtains drawn for the last several months of their pregnancy because it was considered unhealthy for them to get fresh air. We don't do that anymore. How about we don't lock healthy children in an institution all day? How about that? I like it. All right, moving on, because there is something else that I want to get to. Okay. Virtue. How do we train our kids in virtue? Does anybody have the answer to that question? Because this is something that I've been really ruminating about. And, oh, by the way, so I'm revamping. I still have my playbook for home learning. And so I want to tell you about this, because if you find that these Ask Sams help you, you will really enjoy this. This is the reconsideration of what we mean by education. This is how to get the education of your children done. And it starts with defining your terms. So we know from speech and debate, if you're going to debate somebody, if you're going to have an argument with somebody, and I don't mean a nasty argument, I just mean have a disagreement and try to come to terms with it, which is the only way that we find truth in the world. The only way we find truth is through disagreement, because the disagreement tests the theories, it tests it, it pokes at it. And if it's solid, the pokey thing won't go through, but if there's holes in it, then you have to poke at it to find the holes. So this is going to recalibrate the way you think about education so that you can then attack the education of your child and feel confident that you're getting it done, despite all of the messaging that has been instilled in you from years in the school environment. Because the school environment taught you one big thing, and that is that you are inadequate. You can do this because you got an A in that, and you can do this because you got an A in that. But besides that, you can't do anything because you didn't get an A in it. That's what the school taught you. How do you teach virtue to your children? And I've thought about this because I wrote a book about teaching virtue to your children. I didn't give it much thought more than the way you teach virtue to children is you talk about it. And how do you talk about things with kids? You tell them stories. So I wrote a book of very short stories, one every day, that focus on different aspects of virtue, virtuous qualities, the qualities that we want to see reflected in our children. And what's interesting is when I wrote this, I wrote, it's an inspirational, educational, devotional for families to explore and embrace the godly qualities we want for our kids. And then I wrote in parentheses, and for ourselves. And in fact, some of the things in here may challenge you. Are you a virtuous person? So I started pulling at this thread, like, how do we teach virtue? And okay, this is one way, like you can do this in a year and it's a lot of fun. I get great comments about it, which is kind of fun for me. I get great comments about this book and the families that are enjoying it and how much they enjoy it. And I even put in there, because my kids said the most amazing things, I put little annotations pages, little blank pages, so that you could mark down the things that your kids say about the different things that you're talking about. So I started pulling on this thread. I mean, there's got to be other ways that we teach virtue. You know, Plato did a whole, there's a whole write-up about Socrates discussing virtue and whether virtue can be taught, full stop, whether it can be taught. And it does seem that at the end of that discussion that he surmised it can't be taught. But his reasoning was kind of faulty, because he said the teachers who should be teaching virtue were failing to teach virtue. Therefore, virtue can't be taught. Well, that's kind of silly. That's like the thing that I don't believe in doesn't exist because I don't believe in it. It's sort of circular reasoning. Is not quite right. And I believe that you can teach virtue. You must. So here we have a comment: instructing the children will inspire the adult to be a better person. Well, at least in normal people outside the public school. Okay. Thank you. So you see where I'm going with this. One whiskey. That's exactly where I'm going. To rear a child in virtue, we must show them virtue, tell them about virtue, read them stories about virtue. But most importantly, we have to exemplify virtue. Who wants to do that? Wouldn't we just rather be bad? Go have fun. You be you. You only live once, YOLO, right? Live for the moment. I think this is the greatest challenge. I have a feeling that this is the reason that parents don't want to homeschool. They don't want the responsibility of being a role model. Did I just say that out loud? That's a tough one. So think about that. If that's what's standing in your way, do you really think so little of yourself that you can't be the role model that your child craves? Because children crave authority. They crave it because it makes them feel secure. As long as they know how to predict the behavior, the reaction of authority, it gives them security. Hola, tudo bem? Como faço para conhecer Sorbo Studios. How do I something to go to Sorbo Studios, sorbostudios.com? I think. I don't actually read Portuguese. I'm pretty sure that's Portuguese. Okay. I had to take a break off of that because that is a really difficult thing to come to terms with. It used to be in this nation, you know, our founders pledged their lives, their liberty, and their sacred honor, their fortunes, their lives, their fortunes. But more importantly than their fortunes, their sacred honor, they pledged to each other, knowing that by signing the Declaration of Independence, they were in fact signing their death warrants. And they were heroes. They were faulty. They were also sinful men. They also, right? There is no one who's righteous. No, not one. But they were heroes. They pledged their sacred honor. What did that mean? It meant that their honor was worth something. Is honor worth anything today? And if it's not, is that a good thing? I say it's not a good thing. I say we ought to get back to honor. And the way we do that is we show our children virtue, and then we show them the bar, and the bar is way up here. The bar is high. It is hard to reach that bar, and most people fail. And that's okay as long as they're striving. So I asked my son today, because I've been pulling on this thread and I've been wrestling with it. I said, do you consider yourself virtuous? And by the way, I mean, full disclosure, I think that I've raised 3 very, very capable, virtuous young people. And he said, well, it depends. What do you mean by virtue? Virtuous? You know, I feel weird just like I'm bragging that, yes, I'm virtuous, you know. And I said, well, let's consider that virtue would be defined as always striving for good and doing our best to avoid evil. I think that's a reasonable, you know, last minute sort of definition. So if we are striving for good, isn't that what we want for our children? And by the way, shouldn't we want that for our children? Like, wouldn't that be the best thing to want for your child? I'm not even talking about, you know, education, but in fact, that is education, right? Education should be the learning of morality and the learning of virtue, among other things, but certainly the learning of virtue, because we have to be able to sleep at night. And if you're an evil person, by the way, we all know the difference between good and evil. The youngest of children know what's fair and not fair. So we all know what's correct and what's wrong. We know that stealing's wrong. We know that we value our personal property, and therefore other people value their personal property, and therefore you don't steal other people's property. But if you don't teach a child virtue, then yeah, there's a part to him that's, you know, why not bully? Why not just go after other kids' things and take them? And in fact, that's what's happening in our schools today, because they're not actually engaged in education. So back to my son, who was answering my question. He said, well, if you're just defining it that way, you know, fairly loosely, then I would have to say yes, because I do strive to be good, and I don't do evil things. I avoid doing evil things. I apologize if I do something to offend somebody, right? That's all virtuous. And I said, how did you learn to be virtuous? Because I wrote this book, but I didn't do it with my kids. I wrote it when they were basically older. And so I figured we basically did this together, but not really, not this book, not this thing. And in fact, it's funny because when people ask me, like, if I believe in devotionals, which is funny because I've written several, I like them, but I really prefer for people to read the Bible. Like, read the Bible. It's there. It's all in there. This is reinventing the wheel, and it's probably, you know, it's square. It's not even round, you know? So, I said, how did you learn to be virtuous? And he thought about it for a minute. And he said, I guess the Bible. And I said, yeah, right. So I think the best way to teach your children to be virtuous is read the Bible every day. And I know that sounds like, ugh, really? It's that simple? Come on. Or it's that boring or whatever. But that's because you haven't read the Bible. I have to say that because I used to feel that way. I didn't read the Bible. I mean, we started doing a Bible study and that was fun because it was like a social thing. And my kids got to do a social thing with other kids doing their Bible study. And I did mine with, other adults, and it was fun. But when we started sitting down as a family and reading the Bible, and we did it every day, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe sometimes half an hour, it wasn't a really concerted effort. It was just like, well, we don't have time to do the Bible study anymore, so let's do this way. Oh my gosh, life-changing. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And if that is all you do with your kids, you're covering history. There's some science in there. There's some economics in there. There's great storytelling. There's great literature. You're covering all 5 of those subjects, and more. Okay. So don't discount it. Also, you have to understand that school is not a set time. So, I think one of the biggest questions that people ask about curriculum. Okay. People ask, how do I start? Did you teach your child to tie his own shoes? Then you have started. Did you teach your child to hold a knife and fork? You have begun. Did you teach your child to pray? You're on your way. It is not more complicated than that. And then you're going to ask, well, what about curricula? And to that, yes, there are some great curricula out there, but that is not the be all and end all. So on my website, I have several different curricula that I like, that I recommend. Some I've affiliated with. And I did them, right? Some of them. So I highly recommend them because I actually did them. And that's great. It will make you feel like you're checking a box. And I understand that you have to feel like you're checking a box because you came out of the industrialized institution. But I want you to recognize you've been conditioned to need to check a box. And I want to set you free from that. I want you to understand you don't have to check the box if you don't feel like it. So what does it look like if you're not going to check the boxes? Well, there's a thing here in the state of Florida that they have an evaluator that you have to do either a test or an evaluation. So I choose the evaluation, and an evaluator interviews my children at the end of their school year and asks them what they learned. Ask your child what he learned. And if he's not learning something, set him up to start learning something. And if he does learn something, check your box. It's that simple. Now, I believe children should learn grammar. So go get yourself a good grammar curriculum. I always recommend Shirley because that's what I did. I'm not affiliated. They don't have that kind of a program, unfortunately, because I've recommended them a lot. I absolutely love them. But there are other ones. There's Excellence in Writing, Institute for Excellence in Writing, IEW. They also have a grammar program. There are other ones. There are grammar books and stuff. I would highly encourage you to take a look at Shirley because Shirley makes it super easy. And I always give the caveat that the writing component in Shirley, as good as it is a little bit overbearing. I wouldn't do the entire program. So I would do maybe every other week or every third week for the child because it's a lot for young children and it's not necessary. But even if you decided not to do grammar with your young children, When they get to the age of 12, you can give them a grammar book and do it all. In fact, that's what Classical Conversations does. They just dunk the child in a vat of grammar when they turn, well, actually, they start a little bit earlier. I think when they turn 8, something like that. Then all of a sudden, it's like the whole grammar right there. Boom. And you're in it. And you do it for 3 years. So that's what they do. I appreciated doing grammar with my young kids. And the reason is this: grammar shows them that language has order. And when they see that language has order, they start to see, oh, the world has order. And that's their glimpse of a creator, frankly. It's their comfort. It gives them comfort to know, oh, there's a system in place. It maybe doesn't make sense to me, but it does make sense. And as long as I keep at it, I will figure it out. And then I can make sense of all of it, right? And that's important for young kids, for them to feel comfortable, secure. So I highly recommend that. Plus, it's a lot of fun. So Shirley does jingles. You learn jingles with your kids. You sing the little songs. You can put them on in the car. I was talking to somebody today about podcasts for children, and she was lamenting that she would see on these homeschool groups, co-ops and things, people asking about children's podcasts that they can put on for their children. Okay. Oh, okay. First of all, there are no good podcasts. There are so few good podcasts for children. I can't say none, but what we've done to children in our culture is we have further infantilized them. So they're already little kids, but we make them even smaller than they are. We make them dumber than they are. We talk down to them. Don't do that with your kids. Don't expect them to rise up to your level. So why are you looking for a children's podcast? Unless your kid is 4 years old, maybe. Okay. And it's something really insipid like Barney, the dinosaur or whatever. I'm not keeping up on little kiddie programs, but even like the Bible, putting the Bible into cartoons, I struggle with that. I don't think it's necessary. The Bible is a really cool book. It's got some really great stories. Why are we dumbing them down for our kids? I mean, okay, the overtly sexual stuff. Yeah. Okay. You shield your kid from inappropriate material, but there's a ton of great stories that the story of Joseph, which we tell incorrectly these days. Like really, we get it so wrong. Go look for sermons by good speakers on the stories of the Bible so that you understand the implications of the stories in the Bible, and do those with your kids. And then ask your kids questions about them and see what they retain, see what they learn. We tend to try to put stuff on for the kids that we don't have to engage with, that's sort of silly. Rather than doing that, put stuff on that you want your child to know. Good stuff, interesting stuff. Let your kid really, glimpse information and see how much they retain. And, we've all met the kid who knows everything about, every race car at the Formula One, or every whatever at every different kind of horse there is, or, let your kid be that kid. The nerd who knows like a ton of stuff about something, because what does that do for the child? Now the child feels competent in something. What a great thing to have. Let the child feel competent in that thing. So, okay. Back to virtue. So my son believes that he learned his virtue by reading the Bible. JW.org has some great Bible-based kids programs. See, but I struggle with, well, I don't know what you mean by great. I don't know why they need like kids program. You know what I mean? Like we've taken on this idea that kids need to be entertained differently. And I'm not sure that I agree with that. That's what I struggle with. Because our culture has so infantilized children that, they're not growing up anymore. We're just raising adult-sized children now. And so let's stop doing that. I'll tell you, I mean, my own kids are adults and they struggle with kids their age because the kids their age are still children. They're not thinking adult things. They're not engaging in exchanging with the world as adults. So instead of letting the kid hold the light, let him fix the car. Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. And I'll tell you, when I was, oh my gosh, I must have been like 7 years old. And we were on our way to Brownies. My mother had put me into Brownies and we were driving the VW bus and it broke down on just a side street well behind the school, but it was too far for me to walk. And she got out of the car and she's like, I don't know what we're going to do. Let me go take a look. And she went to the back and she opened the engine. So I went to the back and I looked at the engine with her. I just stood there and looked at the engine and she was just puzzling it out. And I remember saying, but mommy, don't you think this thing should go there? And it was like this weird stick thing that there was a little hook thing that it looked like it should sit in. So I was like, shouldn't it go there? So she put it in and she went to the car and it started again. And so ever since then, she credited me with fixing the car. And don't you think that was like, made my day? Like that made me feel awesome. Your children are more capable than you imagine. And what an amazing gift to you to watch your child be capable at anything. So how about we look for those moments with our kids as opposed to like feeding them pablum and just hoping that they don't choke on it. Let's feed them good stuff and feed them stories to inspire virtuous behavior and feed them truth so that they can recognize truth when they come up against it. And so they can recognize lies when they come up against lies. Hi there. You know, for years, I've been talking about how our public schools, our government schools, have been captured by progressives and their progressive ideology, and that they are teaching things that directly contradict the values of millions of Americans, our traditional American values. And that's especially true if you're a Christian family. So for those of you who are worried about the best educational path for your children, I am pleased to announce my new partnership with the Herzog Foundation. They are a trusted source on K through 12 Christian education, and they have a remarkable suite of resources for parents who are thinking about making the switch from government schools to either Christian schools or homeschool. From their online publication of The Lion to their network of podcasts like mine. The Herzog Foundation offers a wide range of advice and information for Christian parents to make the best educational decisions for their children. If you want to learn more about how your family, your faith, your community can flourish through a Christian education, you go to herzogfoundation.com. That's herzogfoundation.com. Thanks for listening. I recognize that so many people who homeschool are really at a loss and they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to screw up. They're afraid they're going to do it wrong. They're afraid that they're going to fail their children and their children will get messed up. And the saving grace there is if you send your children to school, they're going to be messed up. They just will. The best thing you can do for your child is be there and like 24/7, like be there with them, go through life with them and show them what that looks like. And if you show your children what it's like to be an adult and you involve them in adulting, being an adult with you, they will learn so much that just because you can't grade it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And that's, I think, the biggest sort of issue that we have between what our schools do and what education is we think that what the schools do is education. So we think if we can't slap a grade on it and we can't test it, then it has no educational value. But that's absolutely a lie from the pit of hell. Oh, you want me to teach them to think outside the box? That's a great thing. I want them to learn to think outside the institution, because if you're still trying to jump through the hoops that the institution has sort of erected before you, I won't say you'll fail, but I don't want you to succeed at that. I don't want you to succeed at homeschooling your children. And I know, because I schooled my first two. It wasn't until my third that I learned that it had so little to do with checking the boxes and issuing grades, which, by the way, just as an aside, my two boys decided against college, which is so crazy, because I grew up, I mean, my whole life was college, college, college. He was going to go to college, and I was going to get a career. It's like college was the thing, and everything was about college. And then my first two boys, who I schooled, who are highly intelligent, super capable young men, have decided against college for, I suppose, obvious reasons, but still, it's sort of, how far I've come, right? My daughter just got accepted to college. My unschooled daughter, she wasn't really unschooled, I shouldn't say that, but it was with her that I finally sort of took off the training wheels and said, okay, you know what? We're going to do this, but we don't have to do it. We're going to do it because we love it. We're going to do the philosophy because we love it. We're going to do the math just to get the math, but not to get the grade, just to wrestle with the mathematical ideas, to poke at them, to see if there's truth in there, to see if they really make sense, to see if they work, and see how that goes. And she is my most studious. She loves learning, and she probably wants to go to college to study more because she loves it so much. Not at all what I expected. And by the way, if you tune into the podcast, go subscribe to the podcast, because the only reason I found this college is because I interviewed the director of admissions, or one of the directors at the school there. I interviewed him. And I'm like, it's a whole different way of doing college. So you go tune into the podcast to go listen to that interview. I found it fascinating. And that's why I said, Tavy, take a look at this school. And she's like, that's cool. I'm going to apply. And I'm like, okay. So she did. What the school taught me was to take tests, but the tests weren't realistic. Well, we switched over a while ago to testing as the highest metric that we could have. And that's a struggle because, well, I can't take tests. I couldn't take tests when I had severe anxiety about my inferiority and my, the odds of my success. Like when I was very concerned in school, because I was really, how do I put it? I was afraid that I was going to fail. I was just imbued with this sense of failure, that I was absolutely going to fail. And so it was very hard for me to take tests. And I could tutor somebody in the subject matter the night before. We would go over everything, and he'd be asking me questions, and I explained it to him, and he would perform better on the test than I would. Because, I mean, I remember a test where I sat there for a full half hour before I wrote my name. So I was just, a deer caught in the headlights. And now it's worse. And by the way, the tests are meaningless because they are skewed, because the teachers are basically looked at by their test grades. So they will make tests that their kids can perform well on. And so they don't make the tests as challenging as they might otherwise make them. And then the kids who would excel in the class stop trying because it's too easy for them. And some of them even get bored. I remember when I was in school, there was a boy who got really bored. He was very advanced. He got super bored, and they finally pulled him out. I scored really well on tests, but my actual knowledge of some subjects was not sufficient. Well, yeah, of course. And by the way, when you study for a test, like I used to cram for tests. So I had calculus in high school and I took the AP exam and I crammed for the AP exam. I remember not really knowing what I was doing, but I kind of knew it enough to pass the test. So I crammed for the AP exam and I scored a 4, which was enough for me to not have to take calculus 1 and 2 in college. So in college, I went into calculus 3 and I started tutoring calculus, but I didn't remember any of it. So I literally had to I read the book as I was tutoring because I didn't have the book. So my student would bring the book with him or her. And so I'd read the book with them, but not to them, like as they were looking at it and trying to figure out what to do next on the problem. I would page back and I would read the chapter and then I'd figure out what they were supposed to do. I had the facility. I just didn't have the knowledge in my head. Patriot Party went to college for 3 years, because it was expected of her or him, no, her. And my parents were trained to send their children to college. Otherwise, them and their children were failures. Yes. Yes. If you don't go to college, you're a failure. That's how I feel because my kids didn't go to college. No, there is a part of me like, what are your kids doing now? Are they in college? Yeah. They're not. And I remember I was at and this person, after 3 years of college, dropped out, no degree, taught herself everything she knows. And now she is single-handedly raising a daughter and homeschooling her, which is crazy, and working full-time, I'm sure, because you can. Don't say, well, what about parents who work? Don't give me that. It is not a conflict to educate a child and work at the same time. It is not a conflict. So stop it. I get angry because people are looking for an out. They don't want to. And the reason they don't want to is because, no, I'm not going to say it. Some people don't want to because they're selfish. Okay, I said it. Some people don't want to because they're selfish. They don't want to extend themselves. What they don't understand is they're cutting themselves off at the knees. Because the greatest thing you can do is extend yourself selflessly to benefit your child. It's the greatest gift that you can give yourself, is to sacrifice yourself for your child. Say it. Stop. It's egging me on. Don't be selfish and say, oh, I'm not good enough, so I'm going to send my child away from me to learn from strangers what a loser I am. Because that's what happens. You should have seen this young woman who's so disappointed in her own parents. And it's sad. And yes, she understands. They thought they couldn't. They didn't know they could, whatever. But you know what? I'm here to tell you, you can. So stop moping around and feeling sorry for yourself and going, oh, I'm such a loser. Stop it. If the kids can actually think on their feet, you've done a good job. They can think on more than that. They can argue with the best of them. Yes, Pastor Kate, thank you. Yes, I care about the children and I care about the parents. And the fact that we have, I started this whole thing talking about virtue. Where is virtue? We don't want to be we don't want to be the role model for our own children because it holds us to a standard. And you know what? That is the greatest thing that we have going for us, is that our children will hold us to a standard. That is a beautiful thing. That is a gift. And we just squander it because we've been taught to be selfish. We've been taught to feel inadequate, and we don't want to combat that. We don't want to better ourselves. But I'm here to tell you, you can be better. You can do better. You can be better. You can be great. You can be so great that your child or children think you're amazing. That's how great you can be at this. You just don't see it. So I'm here to tell you, you can. You can't outsource the learning of kids, but that's what the government tells you can do. Yeah, you can. The problem is that they will learn that you're a piece of crap. That's what the government's going to tell them. Don't trust your parents. Have all the sex you want. Dress like a whore. I can't believe the way young women dress today. I can't believe it. There is, okay, one quick story and then I'll go. My 40-year-old friend shared with me that her 15-year-old son is now ashamed of her when she drives him to school. This is what school does to families. Tell her to stop driving him to school. Pull him out. He's 15. If he doesn't know crap by now, it's done. They're not teaching him anything more. So pull him out and start teaching him real history and teach him who you are as an individual, because you have value. I can say that because I'm Christian and I know it. You don't have to be Christian to know it, but it's the truth. I didn't score well in typing. No kidding. I can tell. Look at your texting on this thing. You can barely spell. Didn't. Okay. I promised you a quick story because I want to say this, and this is a tough story to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway. There's a school near me and by the way, this is like all the Christian schools, like very few Christian schools have escaped the culture. Okay. And the reason is because the culture enters through the teachers and through the children and through the textbooks. So even if the school, like even if they have it written in stone above the door or whatever, Solo Deo or whatever you want to put, right? Even if they do that, the culture has enculturated the school via the teachers, the books, and the students, or at least 2 out of 3. Christian school, and we have a young friend who goes there now. He was homeschooled, and he's young, but he's a senior in high school. He's not young for a senior. He's just a bit young in his outlook and certainly young in his experience. And so there was a young girl, also a junior. I guess he was a junior at the time, and she's a junior, and he had a crush on her. And they got to talking, and he realized that she had already done most of one of the sports teams at the school. And by done, I mean, sex. And she's 17. And he kind of took a deep gulp, and he kind of went, well, I haven't even kissed a girl, so this is kind of a non-starter for me. Good for him, right? And she was incensed. Why? Why was she incensed? Because he was judging her to be a whore. But that's what a whore is. It's a young woman who sleeps with anybody for no apparent reason. But that's what the culture gives us, encourages. So here's the thing. Why was she incensed? Just because he didn't want to sleep with her? She was upset. But why? You would think she'd be like, fine, don't sleep with me. I can get any other guy I want. No, there's the rub. She knows that it's not right. She knows that she has squandered something precious. She knows it. We all know it. We know that it's wrong. But we do the things that we don't want to do, and we want to do the things that we don't do. Do you want the government Department of Education to form the kids' moral compass? Well, you can't. They're not going to form the moral compass. I mean, obviously, right? So I understand. That's your input on this. So they don't claim to have anything to do with morality. That's the ridiculousness. They shouldn't call it Department of Education. They should call it Department of Schooling, Department of Academics. They can't call it that anymore, but that's what they should. It's misnamed, and it's made us believe things that aren't true. And this is the big problem is we think we've been educated, but we weren't taught virtue. We weren't taught morality in school. And so if you didn't get it from your parents, then, hopefully you got it from the culture, but that's boy, that's moral capital that we are just squandering left, right, and center, and we're running out. And that's why we've got riots on the streets. I don't know if you saw recently, but there was a report that the voters in California voted for this law that they wouldn't be prosecuting thefts of under $950 in stores. So now the stores are being looted, literally just gangs running through the store, grabbing all the stuff that they can carry, and they can't call the police because the police won't prosecute under $950. And so basically it's just a free-for-all. And they're wondering why people are breaking the law, because theft is theft, but since they're not prosecuting it, why not break the law? You tell me. If you were raised in a secular school, if you went to public school, if the government taught you your morality, then it's survival of the fittest. Why not go and steal whatever you can? And especially if you've got a free pass for anything under $950. There are a couple of things I'm thinking of right now that I want to go steal. But I can't steal because there's a moral compass inside me that tells me it's wrong, and I will feel terrible if I do it. These people also feel terrible. Oh, but they're entitled, so they justify it. That sets up a whole slew of problems inside them that they will have to, that's going to be karma, man. And you know what they say about karma. So God is amazing and he heals. This is true. It is a sin problem, but they won't know that it's sin unless somebody tells them. And the churches have, to a large degree, many churches have stopped. They won't even mention the word sin anymore, which is sad to me. If you would like the playbook for home learning with all the videos, I am making that available now. So please go to sorbostudios.com to order your copy of actually anything. This is a great gift for any young family or family with children, say up to age 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. It's a great gift. And it's a lot of fun for the parents too. So this was fun. I will be doing the Parent's Guide to Homeschooling. I'm actually very excited about diving in to why we homeschool, who's homeschooling today, because it's a changing landscape, and why, and addressing their concerns. We can address your concerns. And so if you have anything that you want me to talk about, feel free to, you can message me here or email me from the website and get me a message that way. And I would be happy to go into it. Can homeschoolers get into college? Yes. Can they get scholarships? Absolutely. Do you know that a lot of people just Google what is homeschooling? Because they don't know. So we're going to cover that. We're going to cover all of that and save your family at the same time. Oh, Sorbo Studios is on here. And so, yes, international shipping is available. She wants to make sure that you know. So, yes, absolutely. And thank you for joining us from wherever you join. So, thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.
Views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.